So yesterday I was having a debate. What's up, everybody? Um, what was the better load board, Dashboard 360 or Internet Truckstop? So for those that may not know, a load board is where you go for a freight broker and a driver. As a driver, you're going to go there to look for freight if you need to get your next load. As a freight broker, you will go there to post freight if you are trying to, post the load. Now, if your freight brokerage firm is big enough, you can just post the freight on your own site, and which is the easier way. Like I said, I preach self-sufficiency. So once you get to a point where you got that much freight, you just post the freight on your website and the driver can just come to your website. But for those that are still building their freight brokerage firms, that board to me was the better place to go to post freight, because that board is like McDonald's. It's everywhere. You go into the truck stop and there's a big screen and it lists all the different freight that's, going wherever it's going from the area that you're in, and what freight broker is offering that freight. Internet Truckstop offered the tools that you needed in a lot more detailed fashion. The rate calculator on Internet Truckstop was perfection to me. You could be within a couple of $100s of what that rate should be just off of the rate quote from Internet Truckstop. Like, I either posted loads a couple $100s over or a couple $100s under, depending on what that rate quote gave me back. So the rate quote calculator on Internet Truckstop was way better than that board to me. Also, the national fuel average. The national fuel average calculator on Internet Truckstop was way better to me than the national fuel chart on Dashboard. Not to mention the fact that when Dashboard offered those services, they were like crazy expensive. You could spend, like, I had both services. I had a membership to both. All I used Dashboard for was to post freight. Internet Truckstop, I used them for what I just said, the rate calculator, national fuel average, what commodities were paying what in what areas. Let me give you an example. Leaving Florida, the freight out of Florida, unless it's grapefruit season or melon season, is crazy cheap. And this is just a made up number, if I had a vendor that gave me a load for $1,000, they were like, we'll pay you $1,000. Most of the time I got them for like $1,100. I was getting them for like $1,100-1,200 out of Florida. But drivers automatically knew that the freight leaving Florida was paying dirt cheap. So in an average scenario, any other place, if I'm getting $1,200, $1,300, the goal is to make about $200-300 off of each load, right? That's the goal as a freight broker. I would have had to have paid them $900 to $1,000. But because Florida freight was so cheap, I could get away with paying like $500. I think I sent drivers out of here like $500 or $600 on freight that I had like $1,200 in. Florida is a freight broker's market. However, the drivers that knew me, they knew that was what the game was, because the rates were so cheap coming out of Florida, but they would get me in like Georgia or Tennessee. So in Georgia or Tennessee, if I had freight in those places, at that point, the tables turn again. So now the driver is making the bulk of the money on those loads. So you can come into Florida having made $15, $16, $17, whatever, $3,000 on a piece of freight, right? Depending on where you come from. But leaving Florida in any direction, it was only going to pay you a couple $100 because the freight was so cheap. It was that bad. But again, melon and grapefruit season, orange season, they would make all of that money back up. At that point, the driver can charge you whatever rate he wants to on that load. You need to be able to strategize when you're running long distances, right? A driver's mentality, an experienced driver's mentality, is not to fill the truck up every time it runs out of fuel. New York to LA, 3,000 miles, about 3,500 miles. You need to be able to stop for fuel and make money off of that run. If I leave New York, I'm going to stop probably somewhere in Virginia. Hopefully I can make it to maybe Tennessee. I doubt it. Probably Virginia. And stop for fuel. The fuel price in Virginia might be high. So if I'm on E going into Virginia, I will stop, put $150 in, get it to Tennessee, fill all the way up, and then take it on out to the Midwest, and then find out what the fuel price is on, where the next rate of cheaper fuel is. Internet Truckstop was good for that. They let you know every state what the fuel price was. Now, a driver who is, a good businessman knows what I'm talking about right now. A driver that doesn't really, a driver who isn't invested in the company, they're just like, man, whenever this thing runs out of fuel, I'm stopping. So if you're an owner-operator with multiple trucks, then you have to brace yourself for that. The driver's not going to think, okay, I'm going to stop here, get a quarter of a tank to get me to the next stop, and then fill up in this place. Unless the driver is invested into what it is you're doing as you are. But Internet Truckstop was the best place for that. Me personally, I stayed out of the mountains. I've been around this country twice, like every state minus Alaska. I've been around this country. I never went into those mountains. South Dakota, North Dakota, Montana, all that stuff. I stayed out of there because the mountains are going to drain fuel. Now, you got drivers that want nothing more than that, and those drivers know how to charge according to that. But if you don't know what the fuel rates are, you don't know what you should be getting paid going into those mountains. I wasn't an expert in going into those mountains, so I stayed away from them. I would stay regional. Sometimes I would be local. Sometimes I would just run the East Coast. But people think it's not a science to, doing long distance truck driving. Wrong. If you're trying to make money, you need to know how to gauge your fuel stops. You need to know how much a rate is going to pay you, leaving what area coming out of, whatever state you're in. To me, Chicago was another place where you made a lot of money. You can make a lot of money coming out of Chicago, especially if you went out of Chicago going into like North Carolina or something. You were making money. A lot of drivers stay away from running Florida freight just for the reason that I just told you. So it's all strategy. I had memberships to both DAT board and load board. DAT board and Internet Truckstop. InternetTruckstop.com, DATboard.com if you want to Google them and see what they are. But I had memberships to both of them. I used one for one set of services. I used DAT board for posting freight. You can't beat DAT board to me when it comes to posting freight. I would love to hear comments on this. If any drivers are watching this, please leave a comment and give me your experience. But DAT board was too expensive to me. So they charge you according to the services that you used. I didn't like their rate calculator. I didn't like their little national fuel, their little whatever section of that website. It was too much. They were charging me like $300 for all of those services. And I could go to load board, get all of it for like $100. The rate calculator, the national fuel average, everything that I needed in terms of what knowledge I needed, and just use that board to post my freight. So both of them are good. If you want to get your freight moved, because with freight brokering, you need to, and most of the time you only got 24 to 36 hours to turn that freight around and get it pulled. After that, if you're lucky, the vendor will work with you an extra day, but after that, they're going to take the freight from you and give it to a bigger company. I never ran into that problem because I always used that board when it came to posting our freight. So that's my opinion. That's that board versus Internet Truckstop. But I highly recommend getting both memberships. If you're just getting started as a driver or as a broker, get both memberships and utilize them to the fullest and take yourself out of a company driver mentality. You got to break yourself out of a company driver mentality. You got to be able to know that I'm going to make more money if I stop, get a quarter of a tank worth of fuel right here, and then fill up somewhere where the fuel is cheaper. You got to strategize and know how to maximize your profits. Again, knowledge is currency. Knowledge is the new currency. Live by that.